Hey folks, this is Gadget. Please forgive my voice. I've been sick for the past few days, but just wanted to do a little bit of a deeper dive into this VIC20 Programmer's Guide. Personal Computing on the VIC20, a friendly computer guide. Now, there were all sorts of computers coming out in the early 80s, and they all come with operators manuals of various sorts. But what makes this one particularly special? Why does this one uh, resonate with me even still today, and why did it have such a big impact on my career as well as on the success of the VIC-20 as a computer? In order to understand that, you have to go back to understanding what PCs were like in the late 70s and early 80s when this thing was all thought up. Um, at the time, the whole notion of a personal computer was really new. Um, Most people had never touched a computer if they had heard of them, but they were always like a big machine in a building somewhere with technicians maintaining it, that sort of thing. Personal computers were starting to become a thing, but they were still very much a business thing. If you went out and bought, say, the Apple II Plus, which was released in 1979, just the basic machine would set you back $1,200. And that's with minimal configuration, not including a monitor, not including any peripherals, not including any software. At the time, that was a lot of money. I think $1,200 is equivalent to something like 4 or 5 grand today. And also, you got to think about how people's perceptions of machines were different. These early computers were not at all friendly. Today we're used to our graphical user interfaces. You power things up and you've got your mouse and you point and click, whatever. What we had at the time was you power things on and you've got a command line, not just a command line, but a programming environment like BASIC or something like that coming up. And people didn't understand even the most basic concepts of computers. There was a lot of fear. There's a lot of, this is an expensive thing. What if I break it? What if I type the wrong thing? What if I screw up and damage this expensive piece of gear? And so that was a barrier to adoption for a lot of people, a barrier to bringing computers into the home. And so Commodore had this idea of selling what they were going to call a friendly computer. And that became what became the VIC-20. In 1980, it was announced, and the initial price was $299, which was still a lot of money for the time. But compared to the much larger price tag of some of the other systems of the time, it was much, much cheaper. They also did things like setting it up so that it could connect to your TV instead of requiring like a dedicated monitor or something like that. It would actually came with an RF modulator that allowed it to connect to televisions, which people already had in their homes. And they also followed on the model of what people like Atari were doing in terms of, let's focus on things like games. Let's make games available for this thing. So it has a joystick port, it has a cartridge port on it. So you could plug this thing in, play games on it, have fun with it. It became a family device. But the other thing that really changed things was the manual. And it was the whole notion throughout the entire manual of, this is a friendly computer. This is not hard. You shouldn't be intimidated by this. Here's what all the basic concepts are. Here's what they mean. And you can't break it just by typing something on the keyboard. You can encouraging people to actively explore and experiment and try things. And that different mindset is what led this to become the first computer that actually sold over 1 million units. So let's take a closer look at this, and we'll talk a bit more about it. So when you power up a VIC-20, this is what you've got. Nice, welcoming, friendly screen. Yeah, this is completely cryptic, right? Imagine it's 1981, you just brought one of these things home, you've spent $300 on this thing, you plug it into your TV and you flip it on, this is what you see. what the hell would you do with it, right? So this is why the user's guide is here. So let's take a look at this. And I want to work through some of the chapters and some of what's here in the book. So this is the guide. You see on the screen you've got this picture of a family, late 70s, early 80s. So of course they're all white. But you have the family all gathered around the computer, connected to the TV, and Dad is poking at the keyboard, and they're all smiling, and it's friendly. And this is the name, a friendly computer guide, right? And today, I'm used to manuals where you can't even read the manual because there's so many warnings about, hey, you might kill yourself, right? Don't take a bath with this, you might electrocute yourself, that sort of thing. The only warning I see here is a warning about radio interference that was required by the FCC at the time, and it's just this little bit on the introductory page. And then you start getting into the guide itself. So you start with these title pages. You've got a quick, friendly preface, just kind of explaining what the computer is, that sort of thing. This is probably the most block of text that you're going to encounter in this whole thing. But even this is very friendly, very welcoming language. You're about to meet a friendly computer, friendly in price, friendly in size, friendly to use and learn on and experience. Most important, you don't have to be a computer programmer or even a typist to use it. That's the very first paragraph in this whole thing. It's talking about how easy it is. This chapter continues along like this, talking about a lot of just very basic stuff, like how to move around on the screen, how to type things, how to use the shift key to type a quotation mark, how to backspace, the basic concept of typing in a command and then hitting enter and having that do something. And so I'm not going to go through all the details here because it gets a little repetitive for a modern audience, but it teaches a lot of the very basic foundations of how to navigate things like a command line. And then it gets into, finally at the end of this first chapter, we get to our first computer program. It's right here, which is a common Hello World style program, but it talks about initially, okay, how do you clear the screen? So you hold shift and you hit the clear home button, which clears the screen, and then you type new, which erases any program in memory and gets us to a clean starting point. And then has us type in a program, which is a very common first program. You've probably seen this a lot. And that is you enter a 10 to create a first line and then print. And then we say hi or blah. In this case, it says VIC20. Type another quote and then end with a semicolon, which is important in VIC speak. You hit enter, that enters the first line, and then a classic 20, go to 10. And once we've walked through this whole instruction about how to type this, it's very clear about saying don't type the word space, actually hit the space bar. This is how fundamental this stuff is. And it shows a good image of what things are going to look like on the screen when we're done. And then we go on the next page, and it gives us some tips for how to edit mistakes, if you make a typo, that sort of thing. And then finally it says here at the end, type run. Oops. And return. And the screen fills with VIC20 over and over again. The semicolon makes it not do a new line, which is an interesting thing in VIC20 Basic, Commodore Basic. And again, we see a nice image here of what's on the screen. It tells us we can hold control to make it run more slowly. It explains the basics of what's happening and how to, more importantly, how to stop the program from running. And that the phrase break in 10 doesn't mean you've broken something. It just means the program has stopped, and then teaches us how to list the contents of our program. And then just wraps up there with having actually done something for the first time with a computer. Very, very basic something, but still a something. And that's it for chapter 1. So join me next time as I dive into chapter 2 on this book. I think I'm going to do a whole series, just one video per chapter, just kind of work through it, talk about some of the basic concepts, and you can see how it starts to build and how it starts from these very basic concepts, very simple programs, and starts getting you into more advanced stuff, more capabilities, more ability to use more advanced language constructs, etc., as we're working through things. So that's it for this time, and thanks for listening. I'll see you around. Bye.